just normalize thinking out loud. And like,
Yeah.
that's what's so like the problematic about where we are in society, but it's not a problem because it's like, hey, we
Right.
have the tech. We can all think out loud and connect.
Yep.
But the system that we're in it wants noise. It doesn't want connection. So
Yes.
it's trying to suppress any sort of connection and it's trying to elevate all the noise.
Right.
It's like,
Exactly.
hey, it's on us.
I'm feeling a thread that could connect towards that specifically of the idea of thinking out loud and generating knowledge out of that, or processing your thoughts out loud in a more efficient way.
Yes.
And that, so I'm going to hold that, and I'm going to introduce a little bit of a concept that for you, I don't know if you're familiar with or not, but I have.
I'm out. I
Yeah.
want you to hold that because you already have that well formed. I'm
Okay.
going to lay this out because I did this in an exercise last week with a group of people where we were trying to lay out some of these ideas, and it was like, imagine the end of this conversation.
Great.
So let's imagine the end of this conversation.
Love
So that's
that.
what we did.
Great idea.
Like, I was like, all right, who's this dude? I just glanced at your LinkedIn. I didn't like go into it. And I was like, all right, cool. Like change agent. That's interesting. Music producer. Awesome. I have this idea in my head of like the video. And so this is like a potential connection point that I saw was like, I want to take that video, put it to like some music that I listened to since I'm 12 years old. And it's like Hans Zimmer type music, like Inception type music. Right.
Yeah.
And I have this playlist and it's like, the first song starts, it's Moby moving over God moving over the face of the water. And it's like, right? You start the movie at that. When Jordan starts talking about time, literally the song Time from Inception comes on. Like I'm getting like goosebumps just thinking about it. So then imagining that, right? And like doing some weird, cool, like voice modulation to like really hammer home some key points.
Yeah.
Because there's even in the comments in the video, there's some people that are like, there's some like synchronicity moments where like there's a ding.
Yep.
Then there was a major point, and then having like some visuals with that, and then making that like, dude, I want to get like high or get on acid and watch that, right? Like,
yeah,
where's that gonna take me? That's a strange fucking loop of like self-referencing to me, but it's
right.
like that conversation, and like I've talked to like my family about it, and because I shared it with them, and it's like that's not me in that conversation, right? Like that's like me connected with someone that like I've been sort of tuning to.
Yep.
That like struck like two
Yep.
crystals, like almost like it crystallized me in that conversation because I was next to a crystal.
Yeah.
Then we crystallized into like a higher.
Exactly. It brought out the best version of yourself because you were able to interact with someone that brought it out of you, that you were like trying to, I mean, maybe not even trying, but like you literally were drawn to perform in such a way as to like, oh, this is what I'm going to say now. Like,
it was inevitable. Like the crazy thing too, and the thing I love about Jordan Hall so much and why I'm so drawn to him is because he does this thing where it's like this concept of like, there's the moon, and we all have fingers that are pointing to the moon. And it's sort of like the blind man on an elephant. There's like 9 men on an elephant. Someone has the tail, and it's like, no, it's a snake. And then someone has the ear.
I love
right?
This is a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like we all have these fingers, and we're trying to point to the moon. And I think Jordan does the perfect job of not only being the finger, but the moon like simultaneously. Like talking about the fingers,
right?
And in such a way that he is painting the picture of the moon. So if you kind of zoom out and you see it, it's like it's like looking at an Escher painting or a beautiful painting, but then it's like, or if you've seen those perception paintings where you look at it one way, it's one painting, and then you go the other way.
Shifts.
Yeah.
He embodies it. I mean, he really it as he's talking about it, he's doing it so that you can literally like it's not even that you have to try, you learn it from him doing that and being like, I want to be like that. And like somehow it's just this integrated form of like doing it right. I don't know. Like, it's really interesting.
The point of the conversation is the realization that it's like consciousness just does that naturally.
Yeah.
And then at like the most granular level, and then bringing that up a couple layers of abstraction to applying it to your life, to where you can take advantage of those flows of energy. And it's honest, dude, it's literally this. If you think of the algorithm in Tenet and what it does, it fucking inverted entropy, right? So then think about this. And I got in a conversation on Twitter today, and this thought came to me, and it was like, he was like, I don't understand video games. I was like, okay, but think about this. Because he was like, yeah, video games drain me. I feel less than. I was like, okay, what if we designed video games in such a way to match your specific systems in your design to then make you feel whole, because all video games are, it's a dopamine rush. And so basically what you're doing is you're trading future dopamine
Yep.
for your current rush. And now you're at a deficit that you're going to be entropic. It's like an entropic process.
Yeah.
Is there a way that we can invert that entropy? Is there a way that I can stop taking away from my future self, but instead channel all the forces that I'm like getting into towards energy that makes my future self even more powerful, right? Alignment with the infinite. Because the other way is alignment with entropy, and then you're going to zero. And my belief, right? My fundamental belief is like, I guess that's my hypothesis. That's my proposition. It's like, I think we can. And the belief in that is like, that's fundamental to me. It's like, oh, that's catalyzing me to go further. But that's like, the cool thing is like, that's the fundamental too. So it's like, but that's me, right? Then it's like, for you, what is that for you? Well, and then how can you find a piece of that and hop on the thread? So now let's hop into exactly where you were going to go.
Well, it's great because that is the same thread. Both points that I was going to mention are the kind of culmination and of both of those topics, both the talking out loud, recording and getting your knowledge, and this idea of something like video games or something that could make your future self better, like make a better version of you. It's in the realm of the ethical AI companion, this kind of idea of something that can, and this is, I think we're in a good wheelhouse here, because I also saw on your Twitter page, you had hashtag knowledge graphs in there, I believe, right?
You're just like, it's so cool. This is so cool to me because it's like, I'm in these spaces deep. Like, it's like literally like, think of like knowledge graph. If you're familiar with Rome research, it's like, okay, so that's a knowledge graph. I taught a data science course. And so I did a video, it's on my YouTube, where I'm explaining like what Rome is and how I view it as powerful. And like at the very end, I'm like saying like, this is what I envision in the future. It was like AR, where you have your own like mental palace that is specifically designed using AI geared to you. And it's like, all right, so then I literally had this thought this morning. Oh my God, before you even like, this is beautiful. It's like, so you're integrating not only the actual, so your actual environment, like design your space around you to be an environment that you enjoy being in. Art, right? Like I just bought some art to put on my wall because I was like, ooh, I need that. You know? And like I see you have a
ontological design. That's the idea.
The things we design us. And that's like the Markov blanket thing that I described. It's like everything is that. So that, but then the virtual, right? And then get in the virtual, but then the mental too. And it's like, if I can close my eyes and imagine this list of things I'm trying to memorize, but as like, if it's animals, like animals interacting, that's going to incorporate that. But then if I can do that in a visual sense, in terms of like, I close my eyes, but it's like an AR, VR type mental palace, and we're doing it. And if that's what you're talking about, brother.
Very cool. Well, it's tangential.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm going to go into a little backstory now, and it's going to make sense at the end, but
I'll let you go.
Yeah. Perfect. So I've been a music producer and DJ for the last 10 years. I started in college for fun, ended up like just taking off, and it was wild. It very much like, holy shit. And like simulation theory, it's like that would have been the perfect thing to do as like a player in this game. Like it would have been a blast, but that whole thing happened. I've been through massive psychotic breaks, like 5 of which from 2009. And it's been a wild ride for sure. But I've landed in a place where I am now. And this place I am trying to make sense of, obviously, but the guy who invented the Internet of Things back in '99, his name is David L. Brock. He went to the same church as me when I was a kid. So I grew up in a Protestant household, whatnot. And I think a lot of that had to do with some of these breaks and whatnot, but that's a whole separate story. He has been working for the last 20 years on the next evolution of the Internet of Things, which is the Internet of Intelligence. And it is the idea of connecting AIs via language, grammar, concepts, intent, and a common ontology with humans. So this world, the Internet of Intelligence, then it leads to the Internet of Automation, which could, then that can connect to something like the zeitgeist, like TZM or something like that, of resource-based economy and like zero net, like optimizing everything. But we're in this space where I I had this whole big like thought in 2018, DJing of his daughter was doing marketing for the Capstop stuff. I was listening to Sam Harris in 2018, and he was talking about UBI, and I was thinking like, I just love learning so much. I'm in this process of growth, and like, how do we get people to do this more? And so I was equating that with like learning, and then I'm like, well, wait, let's pair that with UBI, this concept of giving people free money. I'm like, what if in order to earn that free money, all you had to do was grow, right? Or learn stuff. So I was thinking like, poof, like, holy, that was nuts. It was a huge realization. I was like paid to learn. And then like, I really broke that down, like maybe not paid to learn, because then it's like, okay, what about like incentivizing discovery? And then it's like, well, what are you discovering? And it really kind of broke a lot of this down to a very basic form. But that general concept was what drove me, that kind of set it off. I talked to David Brock, and he's like, this is great, because a lot of these ideas, big into it. I started working with him and his technology, and now I'm director of transformation at Liquid Intelligence, which is reimagining the ways of living, working, and being. And we have this technology. I'm deep in this world transformational kind of headspace, and I want to now use these concepts, and I want to give you a framework, one more framework before I'm going to let you go, to riff off of this. I basically just use this mythopoetic lens.
Oh my God.
That is like basically reconnecting with childhood and religion and all this of heaven, bringing heaven on earth, right? So heaven.
I should play something. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, we're so close. We're so close. Heaven stands for help everyone attain a viable existence network, right? And in heaven, there are angels, AINGILS, artificial intelligence networked by globally interpreted language. So everyone gets a guardian angel. They all talk to each other, helping somebody throughout life. Go. That's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
All right. So I swear to God, I'm about to get emotional.
I love that.
I've been talking to people, and after the conversation, I've been literally like on a high, literally in like a flow state. And honestly, to the point where I was trying to explain it to someone, it's like, it's almost like I've the thread of my mind, I have inverted the time. I've changed the flow of entropy in my thinking.
Amazing.
Where I'm thinking backwards, right? And, and like, this is just a state, and I know it's going to go away, and I'm just going to ride the wave.
Ride it as you can. Yeah.
One of the things I've been describing is like, I'm like, okay, have you ever been around lightning right before it's going to strike?
That was what sent me to the mental hospital, actually, the very first time. Yeah.
Okay.
I was on a plane, and I was like imagining, like it was, I just looked out the window and I saw this massive lightning strike, felt it in my face, third eye opening, like it was that kind of shit. And then I lost it. It was wild. Keep going.
All right, brother. So I've had those kinds of experiences in my life.
Yeah.
And I can explain it, but obviously it might put me in a mental hospital, particularly for recording. And I plan on actually probably trying to put this on my YouTube at least. So
nice.
Thinking out loud. I literally just got done this morning explaining to a really good friend of mine who's struggling, but like working, and it's like cool to see that. And I was like, I'm at a different place, so it's also challenging because it's like, I don't want my shine to like take away and like be energy suck, you know?
Right.
And so there's that dynamic at play. And I was explaining though to her like how I feel right now after, because we're talking about the video and she's watching it and like it's making sense and it's landing. And I'm like, that's so cool to me because like that's immediate feedback to someone that like part of that conversation is like me, like things in my head that I've said that I wanted to say to her, but then came out in like a crystallized form, you know? And it's resonating and it's like, okay, that's cool. I explained basically like right now I feel like lightning's about to strike. Okay? You just did that. So I'm in another group. Okay, so quick. I'm gonna try and make this as quick as I can. But how much time do you have? I guess
I got plenty of time. No worries. Cool. I'm good. I have nothing else on my calendar for the rest of the day other than like 3 o'clock. So I'm great.
All right. If we're going to 3, this is a hell of a conversation. And
you can jam as long as you need.
Yeah. All right. So like my journey basically began in 2018. I was like in the downward spiral, and I kind of alluded to that, right?
Yep.
In the negative spiral. my buddy, my best friend, Matthew Lamagna, he gave me a book, and it was titled "Where Good Ideas Come From" by Stephen Johnson. And there was one idea, key idea that opened my mind and expanded my reality beyond to the reality that I was in and got me out of the loop. It changed the entropy of that system, and it was the idea of the adjacent possible. And that's an idea that I would love to get into, but it would take too long in this conversation. So
I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
perfect. But I want to like, that's one thing I want to like containerize and like put a different media and ideas to get that to land at people, because it's such a powerful frame to get out of a different paradigm. So that woke me up. I was working in logistics as a broker, on the broker side, and I was miserable. I was like making as much money as I was making in my life, but waking up every morning as miserable as I've been. And that's what I realized was like, where's this disconnect? So basically, like a couple months later, me and my buddy actually, like, that kind of jump started me in a process of like, all right, let's start a company, let's start a trucking company. It's like the industry's hot or whatever, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm on that process. I'm self-improvement, and I've done this cycle before, right? And it's like, all right, what is the values though? And this is the thing. It's like, what was the actual thing motivating me? And at this point, I didn't realize at that time, but like I was in the liminal space and all my value structures had shattered. I didn't realize it yet. And so I was still operating on the old operating system. And like, okay, what does society tell me to do? Okay, start a business. All right, let's do that. Right. So that was what I was operating. I was reading all these books, Principles by Ray Dalio, and actually turns out those are fundamental principles in my like framing now. But at the time I was trying to apply those and become a paperclip maximizer. Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So I go to my job, the VP, like my numbers are kind of down. He's like, hey, don't worry. It's that time of the year, couple months, keep grinding. And you're next in line for manager. I was like, oh, cool. But then I got home. I called my brother. Like, he and I are really tight. He actually moved up to Indiana with me, which I'll get to that. And I'm the oldest of 6 kids, and I grew up in a Christian, private Christian school type bubble in Coppell, Texas, which is a suburb of Dallas. So very much a bubble, right? I'm very much the definition of white privilege as well. Even though I'm Native American, and that's hard. Like, there's that whole dynamic where it's like, you don't look Native American, dude. It's like, I know, but my great grandfather actually had blue eyes than me. But it's like, and that's like all this societal noise. It's like it's like causing internal noise with me. And it's like, also this thing where it's like, okay, all my life, all these people have seen this potential in me and been telling me about it, and I've never lived up to it. And then so there's been that constant, like, oh my God, there's this frame of like, when you die, the definition of hell is basically this: you meet the person you could have been if you made all the right decisions.
That's great. It's a really good
So
one.
I got that frame early, and that's a good frame to have if you have like the emotional equipment and like a Bayesian perspective to understand what that means. And it's like, oh, there's multiple paths in life, and like that's kind of cool. And if I chose this decision, that's where that leads, and that kind of thing, like multiverse type, multi-reality thinking. If you don't have that, and you're very much a binary type thinker like I was at that time, like either God is right and the Bible is 100% right, or it's wrong. And like, if you can't like figure that out, right? Like, I was like playing, basically I was living life with hands tied behind my back. And I feel like that's basically where most of us are. Like, the story I'm telling right now is a story that's going to resonate, not in particulars, but in terms of meta theme with a lot of people probably.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So the very next day after that meeting with the VP of my company, I met with him again. I was like, hey, I'm turning in my 2-week notice. And like that day, it was my last day. And I was like, fuck, what am I doing? One of the companies I was working with, I actually helped grow. Their company grew, it was like one of the better relationships I had. It was an Indian gentleman living in Indiana, kind of funny little, right? And it's also like the dot, not the feather, which might be offensive to someone if they hear that, but like, I think I can say that because I'm a feather. So like, it's interesting too, because like, I actually, past Justin versions had some bad relationships with Indians and different business ventures. And it was interesting, like, oh man, because like that culture is interesting. And then some of the things that introduced me to in terms of Buddhism and meditation and like their mindset, which is totally like orthogonal to the Western mindset, but then like seeing the intersection of that and like, oh, there's principles that are equal. It's like the similarities are more than the differences. It's just the differences are what's on the surface.
Right.
So yeah, so I move up to Indiana. And like, it's a small company, and it's not what I thought it was. And I'm now like dealing with an existential crisis. And now I'm in a position of responsibility beyond anything I'd ever been at to that point, and people looking to me to make decisions. So it was that struggle for about a year, right? And then I stumbled upon Naval Ravikant. Are you familiar with Naval?
Oh, wait. No.
Okay, well, good. This will be a good little Yeah, Naval Ravikant. He's been on the Joe Rogan podcast. I don't know how I stumbled across him. There's a couple of different people that have been sprinkled along the way, like Jordan Peterson, like Jordan Hall, Naval, a couple of different thinkers. You know, a lot of the internet dark web people, like the Weinstein, like Lex Friedman, those types of people. They've helped me, and it's like I've had conversations with these people for the last 2 years. So like that's the second conversation Jordan and I have had. That's maybe the 1,000th conversation I've had with Jordan in my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's
And like that's
definitely
like
a psychotechnology for me now. He's for
talk
sure.
about an angel. Yeah, talk about your angels.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, he's like a AI version that I've simulated in my mind.
yeah.
So yeah, so like that's kind of and like I stumbled across Naval. Naval, simple question, and you just described it in your process in your journey, and it was this basically: find what has played to you that has worked to everyone else.
Mm.
That like shattered my brain. So I shattered another reality there. I started really thinking about that. The first thing that came to my mind was Legos. Okay. And like, I love Legos, literally. Like
Nice.
that was my thing when I was a kid. So I was like, okay, what are Legos? What is Legos about? Right. So around this time too, like we're dealing with some information crises at our company. There's like data flows that are not being utilized that could really be useful for us to make better decisions and make more revenue and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
At my old company, we had an internal like system, and it was beautiful. And I didn't even like, I took it for granted because it's like, you don't know how good you got it until you don't got it, you know? And so at the company that I moved to, a small company, we didn't have it. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm pretty smart. Let me see if I can build it. So I spent a month, taught myself how to code, right? Built the wireframe of a front end of an app, then got into the back end of the data. And I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. All right. Well, this is a whole other world.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, though, another seed in this story was right around the time in the 2 weeks before I moved up to Indiana, where I was kind of in a limbo. Me and one of my buddies from back home, old buddy, right? And this is like tying knots and threads from the past. And I could tell this story. This could be my life story. So this could go on forever. Like the connections I can make. That's like a thread, and this is ultimately what I'm leaning to, like strings of an instrument. And so I play the violin, right? I think also we have strings in our lives that are like threads of our consciousness. And so like when you pluck a string, right, it resonates with mine.
Yeah.
And I feel that. And like you and I have a similar string that plucks and resonates. I can already tell that.
Yeah.
So the like I stumbled upon Python, and I'd never heard of Python, like the the programming language.
Yeah.
And like I'm into like quant and trading, and I always wanted like Fortune's Formula was this book about like the Kelly criterion and Claude Shannon and information theory. And like that, I read that when I was 17. I was like, oh, that's cool shit. But it was always like a weird, like, I always had a false separation. It was like, well, I'm not smart enough probably to be that level, but I'll try and figure out some way to do it, you know? So planted that seed. So fast forward, find what's play. I've reached the wall where I've realized how difficult the back end of data management is, right? And then I stumbled across this algorithm, and I actually have a YouTube video on it. And it's the twin delayed deep deterministic policy gradient algorithm. And I saw this, and it was like the most advanced algorithm for like machine learning in like a 3D environment. So if you think of like a spider and or a cheetah or a humanoid in a 3D space, and like you're trying to get it to learn how to walk. And at first it starts and it's just wobbling around, and there's different levels you can get it to. And basically what this algorithm got it to be able to do, which no other algorithm had done up until that point, was get it to run. And it like really like state of the art performance. And so my goal, I guess that like planted a seed in me. Around that time also I started getting into like quantum mechanics. I was watching like Brian Greene videos. I stumbled across Sam Harris. I actually don't like Sam Harris, which is interesting. I would be interesting your perspective, but it's more like an ideological thing than like as a person. I think what he's doing is great. And so it's just like anything, like he's doing good things. And so I just like, in terms of his framing, I think it's flawed and wrong, but that's okay. Anyways, so yeah, so like all these things are happening. I'm trying to answer this question. I finally figure it out, and I'm like, oh, okay, data science. And so I was in the Army. I had the GI Bill, and you're talking about like getting paid to go to school and incentivizing that. And like, so I was like, oh, I stumbled across this program that the Army was having. It was called Vet Tech, and it was like, didn't even have to use my GI Bill. And it was like a data science program here in Austin. So I moved back to Austin, did this data science program. Turns out I had to use my GI Bill because the vet kit ran out of money, but that's fine. Like I got to use like my GI Bill, right? Took that program, fell in love, right? Broke my brain, realized I was pretty dumb. I didn't know as much as I thought I did, learned a lot. I did pretty good because I then like after the course, they like hire someone to be the TA for the next course. I got hired to do that, taught the course, doubled my learning, but really it wasn't doubling because then it was exponential because I was like on the
once you're teaching, you're learning so much more. It's
exactly. And then then I connected the dots. I was able to teach the algorithm. That was like for me a special moment. And that's why I shared it on YouTube because it was like that was kind of a similar moment. It was like I did it. Like I started out a goal and I accomplished it. And I hadn't done that in a while.
Nice.
Now, fast forward to this conversation with Jordan Hall. After I did that video, as I'm doing that video, I'm getting into some stuff. I'm watching like different YouTube videos, Lex Friedman. He's interviewing like Carl Friston. He's talking about this free energy principle. I actually go watch the video. I see an equation. It's the Fokker-Planck equation. I'm like, oh my God, that's the exact same equation as the Bellman equation from the twin delayed DDPG, right? I connect that. I find a paper that actually shows and proves that it's literally isomorphic, right? Which means equal form, meaning mapping 1-to-1. And I was like, oh, I'm onto something here. And that's like, then I dove into consciousness and then like basically got an acid trip, right? And like, I'm like, okay, that's it. So now I'm literally back in school. I'm using my GI Bill. It's going to be a long journey and I don't know where it's going to end. And I don't even know if I'm going to hit my target, but it's like that process of learning. And it's like, I figured it out. What I am good at, what is play to me, that is work to most other people is learning. Yeah. So how can I situate my life to where I can just always be learning? And that's like kind of, and it's like ultimately my North Star, and we can get into that later, but is like wisdom. Yeah. I have a frame of wisdom, but it's like the pursuit of happiness is not the goal because that's going to leave you exposed. Yep. Pursuit of wisdom, right? Because if even if I miss it, I'm getting close and I'm getting close, right? I'm getting closer. Even missing is getting closer. Trying that is like the thing. And so that's sort of so basically where I'm at now is basically what I'm trying to like, obviously the big question is like, what's consciousness? And I think for me, it's the intersection somewhere between quantum computing, because that was like the goal is basically I want to get into quantum AI because I think that's the next thing. That's not there yet. It doesn't exist, but we're going to need the substrates and people to be able to connect those things. And I think that's sort of a frame of things that I might be tuned to.
Right.
But it's like, but now I'm thinking like, okay, it's not just that. It's like the intersection of quantum computing, artificial intelligence, thinking in terms of like that algorithm I talked about, like philosophy and consciousness and like neuroscience and like psychedelics too. And like trying to do a study, like get into a PhD program where I can be a researcher where I'm researching like how can we use psychedelics as a technology to expand our learning and creativity to get us to where we need to go, which is like what we talked about, the very first thing I say. And it's like, I think this is it. It's basically, we have to get to the point where we're like ostensibly quantum entangled collective intelligence, that integration is a higher whole.
I love everything about that. And that kind of, I mean, it ties in so deeply with some of the kind of core insights that I've had in my life through some of my crises. One of which, the very first one in 2009, was that I felt like a neuron in a bigger brain. And that was like what connected everything. I was just like, oh, I'm interconnected with all of this, right? Like that kind of.
It's so beautiful too, because like, all right, here's a framing to take, because it's like, that's kind of scary because we think like, oh, we're just going to absorb our consciousness into one higher consciousness. Then I'm not going to be me anymore.
Right.
Take it down to you, and now take it down to even the lower system. So let's just think of 5 things, and it's going to be your eyes, your ears, your like all 5 of your senses, right? And imagine that you have like some robot. Okay. Right now, this robot has all these senses, but they're disconnected. So the eyes can see, the ears can hear, but they aren't connected.
It makes sense.
Right. So over enough iterations, though, some random combinations, you're trying a bunch of different connections. There's one connection that happens, and then that is set in stone. And that's a new pattern of neural connections, like literally. Right. And what that pattern affords, though, is now a third sense. And what is that sense? So if the eyes and the ears connect, you now have like basically echolocation, and you can orient to that. Then if you can figure out some more, like we have these appendages, if I can figure out some way to automate that, right? Yep. Then I can move. And then it's like, oh, now I can eat this thing and provide energy to my system. Okay. So then all these things integrate together, right? And then now they have higher wholes, and they have higher, more complex capacities, more ability to change the probability landscape of their environment into actual. And it's that process, right? Yeah. So now take it up from our level to the next level. So like, instead of being an eyeball in the next level, you're the full system. But my eyeballs don't hear, right? And my mouth doesn't like see. Okay. And then also if I wanted to just focus everything on my eyeballs, I could like, and this is what meditation kind of is, right?
Right.
Meditation almost is like this. Have you heard that phrase? It's like you can never step in the same river twice.
Yeah, because it's always constantly changing. It's the river's always.
Meditation is getting your brain to the point where you are stepping in the same river twice.
That's
And
interesting.
it's like, if you think about time and a photon, it's like existing at all time.
Yep.
And it's from its perspective, it's like
Right.
trying to get your perspective to where you're not bringing the photon to you. You are going to the photon. So that's like the meditation aspect, right? And it's like, okay, I can focus all of everything into my sight and I will feel all of that in terms of like that power of that sense.
Right.
But like the combination of that as a higher whole. So then think about this too, because it's like, okay, how can we augment, given we're not there, how can we augment, all right, our internal systems? So Jordan, in one of his videos, he talks about this, and this is actually probably going to be the thing I'm going to try and talk about him next.
Yep.
He has a synesthesia. He's a synesthetic thinker, which basically means like he thinks in, but here's my hypothesis. I actually think we might all be. And this is why I think that. So I actually have a bit of like a semi-photographic memory, which is a weird thing to say. Okay. But let's go in the frame of synesthesia. And if you actually look it up on Wikipedia, like the definition is pretty fuzzy. And it's basically like, if you think with any of your senses, you're a synesthete. I think we have to think with our senses, basically. I think by definition, that's sort of what I'm proposing here. But it's like, all right, so this is cool though. I haven't had it in a long time. And I literally just got it the other day. And it's like, the last time I had it was right before I had one of my first crises, which was, I was at UT. I was a freshman. I basically went from a big fish in a small private school pond to a nobody at UT that didn't know who he was, and his like reality just, and like I was in a bad loop there too. But my aunt lives out in California. And actually, what part of California are you in?
I'm in Hollywood, smack in the middle. Yeah.
Cool. My aunt lives in Malibu.
Oh, great.
Like right now, like a mile away from, I don't know if she's still in Malibu. She might have moved, but like a mile away from Pepperdine, basically.
Cool.
I went out there, or I like went out there all the time in the summer, and like she's big in the like AA, and she does like counseling and that kind of stuff and sponsorships and that kind of thing. So like she's in that space, but she's more like the foo stuff, you know?
Got it.
Like she's very much like, she'll sing like Eckhart Tolle like stuff. And like, hey, that's good stuff. And like that can help you. I'm more looking for the intersection of like science and religion and spirituality.
Right.
The spirituality stuff, if you don't need the science religion, you can just hang on to that. Cool. I'm trying to get to the people that like are hardcore atheists that like, I'm like, hey, your belief in atheism is isomorphic to a belief in God, and like try and realize that. But so, yeah, I was like studying philosophy. I have that playlist, literally the song it was God Moving the Face of the Water on loop, right? I'm reading philosophy. I'm really into philosophy also. It's a chord, it's a tune.
Yep.
I'm writing my notes. Okay. I get into the final, I'm taking the test. I start like hearing the song in my head, and then bam, that note is there in my mind. Like I'm reading the page. So that was like the most clear it's ever been. Like in chemistry and like science classes, like all I had to do was like look at the board, and I kind of just had it, you know? So then that is something I tuned to too, because it's like, oh, okay. Because like now I'm taking like biology, and it's like, oh, I'm tuning to that. I also play the violin, right? I'm taking music appreciation right now. And I think I mentioned in the video, and like some of the things I'm learning from music and then applying it and helping my learning in like physics and stuff. It's like there's music is physics, dude. And it's like, that's what it is. It's awesome. But so like, I think I've figured out, like, I haven't figured it out, but like I've been in a process, and I've like, okay, I got it back. Right. So it's like, if I can do that, I wonder if other people can do that. And then it's like, think about this. It's like, okay, if I'm like, how do you describe blue to someone? All right. But don't even do that. It's like, how does blue make you feel? It's like, okay, how could I taste blue? And then immediately my mind goes blueberries. Right. It's like, okay, how could I smell blue? And I'm thinking like some type of blue flower. Right. How can I hear blue? And I'm thinking blue jazz music. Okay. And it's like, all right, if I want to be, what kind of state and feelings does blue make me feel? Right. And then I think about that, and then you invert it. And it's like, okay, if I want to be in that state, I need to have blue lights and like blue music and like blue smells. Right. But if I need to be in a red state, and this ties into like literally what we're describing in sort of like the mental mind palace.
Yep.
Right. It's like, if I want to be in a red state, like, right, like maybe romantic, I'm trying to get on a date, I want to be the right mindset. So I'm taking a shower, and my lights in the shower are red. I'm listening to some, you know, Barry Manilow, or, you know, Marvin Gaye, and like I'm getting in the mood. He's like, hey, I want to be Mr. Rico Suave, right? But like, dude, that can help you with your, and it's like, okay, so then it becomes, instead of me maximizing me growing as like a productive human member of society,
Yep.
you're saying, you know what, that I can still do that, but instead let me maximize my experience of my conscious reality in every fucking aspect. And if you start getting on that sort of thread and you start like getting those flows, right? And if you think about it like flows of arrows, and it's just a bunch of arrows, and it's like, all right, if you get all the arrows to neutral and you get one up, that's like your rate of change. It's like, okay, 1% better every day. It's pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
Those are dynamic, right? And it's like, all right, the more you can get those flows going on a regular basis, the patterns and routine patterns, right? Crystals, but routines in your life going in that direction, then like it becomes inevitable. Then you're having a conversation with Jared where he's talking about some things, and he's like a person that like definitely is a node in a network that you're also in other networks, and he's talking about mythopoetic. And literally yesterday I'm in another node of a network where after the data science course, me and my buddy did an internet hackathon.
Nice.
And it was design of like like collective intelligence, like how can we design collective intelligence. That was it.
Love that.
Obviously, incredible node to connect to. There's some dudes in there, one of them being Oliver. You literally were in a Slack message yesterday. He's like, I just got mythology.1, mythology 01.
Nice.
And like I was like, okay, I'm taking a shower yesterday. I'm thinking, ooh, because like I have this thing where it's like I'm kind of like Icarus and Narcissus mixed into one. And it's basically like I forget that I have wax wings, so I fly too close to the sun. And part of that me forgetting is because I'm staring at my reflection in the ocean I'm flying over. And it's like, it'd be cool to take a modern update on some Greek mythology and then like add some of these frames that I'm developing and then getting that into a container. And that's like the idea. It's like getting containerized of multimedia of some of these like common threads of consciousness that we all share. And then figuring out ways that different people can portal onto those. And then like having like a collective, like almost like a living document, right? But like not a document, like a container of multimedia, just like ultimately getting it ideally into like a 3D space. When it's like, this is, and like one idea that comes to mind, I don't know if you've ever heard of Neil Stevenson. He's an author.
No.
So he wrote like Snow Crash and like Anathema, and those two have been fundamental frames in terms of how I view reality, and then in terms of how I view virtual reality. And his virtual reality is basically this space where it's like a multiverse, and it's like where everyone just kind of goes and they have their different hangouts, right? And it's like he wrote this in 1994. Then he connects it to like the Tower of Babel moment, and it's a gorgeous story, and it's like a warning, and also like it's like half like this is the ideal we should be driving for, but also half like this is how we should not be going about doing it, and this is what could happen if we do it the wrong way.
Right. That's great.
In 1994.
Wow.
Yeah, and honestly, the thread on that was like Naval. Like, get on Naval thread, and like you'll get there soon.
I have Naval and I have Neil for sure. I'm gonna take a look at those afterwards.
Yeah, man. I like. There's a lot here. I guess we can, for however rest long we've been on this conversation, sort of like piece together where the intersection is, and then like, all right, how can we keep the momentum going? Because that's one thing for me is like when I'm on a wave, I ride it. Then when the wave crashes, I'm like, I gotta go, and you won't hear from me from like 2 or 3 weeks just because I have to like configure the things inside of me. If I can get a good, honestly though, that might not even be a problem if I can just find like a good acid supply, because I think I might just start microdosing.
I feel that. I think the big thing I'm hearing, and I'm hearing a lot of, it's feeling like a basin that a lot of people right now are kind of circling around, which is this
good term is gravity. It's a gravity well.
Gravity well, exactly. Yeah. Which is this desire to, again, reinventio, to use the language of Vervaeke and Hall, this kind of invigoration of values again, of a true north for people. That, and I think so. Tools that help. You were talking about a space and physical, and the one thing I think I was missing there was metaphor is a huge help for that. Is describing is in parable and metaphor.
Fingers to point to the moon.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of possibility there that I don't see in the public as a some type of platform where metaphors can be exchanged and talked about, right? That kind of thing. Parables even can be kind of synthesized together, worked on by in a collective that could kind of add to this collective intelligence project is like metaphor. How do we incorporate metaphor there? Because that's, I remember somebody said a picture's worth, David Swedlow actually, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but 1,000 words is, or sorry, pictures worth 1,000 words, but 1,000 pictures is worth a metaphor.
Oh my
And
God.
it's just like, oh yeah, that's so
All
true.
right, here you go. So like, there's a performance coach. I can't think of his name, and I can't even remember where I got this. So thank you to the universe for giving me this thought.
Yep.
So in performance coaching, he teaches a lot of track people, and he's like, basically all it is being a coach is finding the right analogy for the athlete.
Yes.
And he gives the example. So there's like the one that usually works and lands for most people is this: when you're trying to be like, if you're a 100-meter sprinter, you're trying to get out of the blocks, visualize yourself as an airplane taking off.
Yep.
You're just trying to like.
Where did I hear this? I've heard this as well.
It might have been like on Tim Ferriss or something. It's on a podcast, right? And it's like, visualize yourself taking off. And then as soon as you take off, and as soon as you're upright, now visualize you're running uphill.
Yep.
And like that lands, and it's like, oh, and then they get it. And then their next one, they're just like, boom.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, that's it. It's just like, and then Jordan talks about this in literally, it's the very first video of my introduction to Jordan. It's him, Jamie Wheel, and Daniel Schmachtenberger. Yep. And it's like, it's on Rebel Wisdom. It's a gorgeous conversation. I recommend anyone that's watching this to go watch that right now. Probably stop watching this.
Yeah. What are you doing watching us? This is not.
Yeah, for real. Honestly, it's like we're probably just talking to each other. Fuck, I lost it. Where did it go?
Is it Signal and the Noise? Are you talking about that one?
Yes, that's Rule Omega. Unwind. Where were we right before that?
Metaphor. That was the kind of root of the conversation. And then we talked about the plane analogy, flying, running.
Performance. Finding the right analogy.
Yep.
I don't know where the thread tied into that video, but maybe it'll come back. Whatever. Yeah, it's all about like finding. Oh, I found it. Okay, cool. So Jordan talks about like, it's not about teaching, right? Yep. It's about cultivating epiphany. So it's not about teaching a man how to fish.
Oh, I love that.
It's about giving the person the capacity to be the type of individual that could invent fishing themselves.
Yes. I love everything about that. Giving the raw materials to create insight and the frameworks for it. Yeah. And
it ties into like, so one of my buddies, and actually he and I are the ones that have like Lester, and you'll meet him obviously if we're going to continue to go.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
He's as much a part of this thinking as I am a part of this thinking.
Great.
He's actually getting into, have you heard of synesthesia?
That is what,
or yeah, I think that
synesthesia is like, it's the way you think of the number 7 and like it's blue and it's like,
well, yeah, that's what we were talking about earlier. It's like, it's like the same word almost, like synesthesis. It's synesthesis, and it's like a new kind of school, sort of based upon like Elon Musk and what he's doing with like his kids in like that neighborhood.
Oh yeah, I went there actually. Yeah, well, I didn't go there, but I went there in my pursuit of the learning thing. I actually went to I met the guy who founded the school, the main guy there. I actually still have his contact information. So
okay, cool. Well, I'm just using that as like, so there's people in this space that are doing things. It's like, those are nodes that like, he's connected into that. And it's like, all right, thinking about teaching to children. One of the things when you're like teaching to a kid, it's like, if you're training them as if they're a kid, it's never going to work.
Exactly.
And it's like, you have to treat them as if basically they're little adults.
Yep.
And then it's like, once you do that, the things shift. And then it's like, now it's a more even playing field, because that's the problem with society. It's like, we have all these, we could use the terminology elite, but whatever, parents that are trying to, we don't want you to hurt yourself, so here are the rules. It's like, well, like, first of all, you don't even play by the rules, but also like, those rules suck. They just aren't, they just don't get us to where we need to go. So how about no to those rules and let us make our own? And as long as we're doing that from a place of like honesty and openness and trust and vulnerability, like, I'm going to get hurt, right? Like, I'm going to say something on this. Like, I probably like, I'm openly talking about drug use, right? Like, maybe not great for my potential business. Like, I don't care if that affects my ability to get a job. That's probably not a place I want to work out anyway. So it's like, that's a good thing, right? It's like, sometimes the friction is like the orienting thing of like, don't go there, right? Don't do that. That's okay.
Yeah.
And it's like getting to that point where it's like, hey, you like Sam Harris, right? If I were to have a conversation with him, it would be a great conversation. Even though right now it's like, I'm pretty much diametrically opposed to your worldview, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to have difference. That's what makes meaning. Literally, the difference is in the difference is the definition of what is like fundamental to information theory.
Right.
If you go and watch, like, the Santa Fe Institute has this awesome website called Complexity Explorer, and they have all these like online like resources to like learn about these things. And one of them is like introduction to information theory. In the very first video, the dude that's telling it, he's awesome too. He's really funny. It's a good video, or it's a good like course. He says that it's that phrase. It's like the difference is in the difference. And it's like, we're so hyper tuned to focus on the difference as being the problem. It's like, no, let's invert that. The difference is the solution. It's calculus. That's like integral. What do you like when you're integrating literally, like Jordan was talking about the Leibnizian error and like that. And then like literally we're all talking about the same thing. Cause when you're doing the integral, what you're doing is like we can't get to infinity. So basically we're taking the difference of the difference in order to like get a limit too close to infinity.
Right.
But if we think that we're getting to infinity when we're taking the limit of infinity, we're infinitely wrong.
Yeah.
And that's where we are in society.
Yep.
Fuck.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, to connect back to the schooling kind of thing, I remember walking into, it was like on the SpaceX campus, and I just walked into this place, and it was like, it just looked like it could have been like this like office space for Facebook. It was this open, like warehousey kind of vibe, glass everywhere with like, you know, like things going all everywhere. Like everywhere had writing. They were inventing their own games, like strategy games and stuff. And like, I just started talking to this guy, and like 3 kids come over. He's like, oh, hold on a minute. And these kids just come in. They're like, hey, like, and they sit down, and one kid passes out 3 papers, and they were studies. These kids are 11 years old. Studies on the effects of intergenerational trauma between like World War II survivors and shit. I'm like what was I doing at 12 years old? That like this is insane. Like these kids are just talking about these like really, really intense, like amazing kind of conversations. And so like it's so cool to see that those kinds of things are possible, A, but B, that like we're moving in that direction with some of the like at least some of society is moving in a way that is
powerful nodes of society too.
What's that?
Like power nodes, right? Like gravitational nodes that are like, if Elon says it, like we're gonna shift.
And that's what's really cool about this connected age is that like the internet has allowed these nodes to appear, and then people can use those nodes as commonalities that they can kind of bounce and talk about. Yes, exactly.
Non-linearly. And that's the thing that's like, dude, what you're describing is this process in like current academia where it's like silos of information, right? It's like, oh, this is sacred. You have to go through this process. And it's like, actually, it's not a time process. It's just the information process. And if you can connect this puzzle of these frames together, it doesn't matter if you're 11 years old or if you're 100 years old, like you can understand this information because it's just basic information. And it's like, if you start thinking of your life in terms of like non-temporal, like think in terms of like infinite time, right? And it's like, okay, there's a past version of me, there's a future version of me. It's all me. And so at some state, I'm going to have access to certain information and I'm not going to have access to certain information. So then it's like, how can I just increase like the probability of me utilizing that information I do have access to and I have access to it most effectively to maximize my experience of life?
Yes.
And like, that's such a hard thing to understand though. Cause like, even me, it's like, it's so encoded into us. And that's like the thing. It's like, it is in our code. Like, I learn a topic and then I share that idea with my buddy Lester. And then he starts picking apart some of the ideas because it's just, he doesn't understand it. Cause it's like, it's new information, right?
Right.
I feel attacked. And so I get defensive, I get hot, and like, it becomes a major friction point in our relationship. And like, we're trying to work on that dynamic. It's like, as much as I can talk about this stuff, right, it's still knowledge.
Right.
And it's not quite work to understanding.
Right.
Right. Like I can go through that frame real quick. It's just like, so you have information.
Yep.
Information plus experience equals knowledge.
Yes.
Knowledge plus experience, and that could be future and past experience equals understanding, right? And then understanding, doing that process enough becomes a habit, which is then embodied wisdom, right? And that's what wisdom and well-being, right?
Yep.
That's what that is.
Yep.
And it's like that's the process. And I call that basically like tightening the loop. Like
Yep.
we have these strange loops, right? And it's like, once you can recognize you're in a strange loop, then it's like, okay, let me tighten it. And then like you can tighten it. It's like tightening a knot, and then like the knot goes away, and it's just like total into the thread.
Yep.
And that's when you get to the thing where like you're a full crystal, and it's like things are just inevitable.
Yep.
It's like I don't even have to worry when I wake up. It's like, what am I doing today? I don't know. Something's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
And like I'm not saying that like that's the ideal. Like you're not gonna get there every single day, but it's like
Yeah.
if you can live like that for a week, that's a good week, man. And
Yeah.
like, hey, there's years of my life where I didn't have a week that good, you know?
Right.
And now it's like there's weeks at a time where it's that good.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, can I keep that going? I think so.
Yeah.
Can anyone keep that going? Because if I can do it, honestly, like, yeah, I might be smart. I might have these certain talents that God gave me, but maybe, or the universe, if you like,
whatever your frame
I
is.
use those terms interchangeably. And it's like, all right, but also given the fact that we're conscious things, even if I don't have the talents at the start, literally by my existence, it means that I'm capable of like learning that.
Well, that's the thing. That's what's so powerful about the idea of psychotechnology. Like just that concept alone of like you can outfit yourself with this tool belt to do things.
Yes.
If I gave you no tools and I gave you a block of granite and I said make a sculpture, you're gonna be like, what the fuck? How the fuck do you expect me to do that? But if I gave you, oh, here's a chisel, here's a hammer, like these are two things, like math and language. These are two things. Go, and you're like, okay, I can do that. It's a little hard. Now we have all these other fucking things that we can use. We have power tools. We have all these like getting
an update. We
yeah,
need an update.
We do. We're literally in the process of updating right now.
We're in a transition phase.
Yeah. This is like we are building tools, and it's really powerful. And especially with AI, like this whole kind of, and just new ways of thinking about AI, like machine learning, right, is one thing, but machine learning is fucking dumb. Like the process of what machine learning is, I'll run through this real quick, but like for people who are watching, like they looked at a dog. You remember the dog and the wolf thing? Have you heard of this before?
Maybe. Just keep going.
So there's AI that was 70% accurate, around there, or something like that, in identifying dogs and wolves. And they couldn't figure out why, because it's a black box and it's just learning based off of like examples. You just throw it in there and it just does it. You're like, okay.
Gradients.
Yeah. They figured out that the reason the wolf, the reason they let's say, hold on. Every time it would identify a wolf, it was because of the snow in the background.
Yes.
And it was like, wait, what? So if you put a puppy or a poodle in the snow, it's going to think it's a wolf because they're looking for the snow. It's not looking for the right thing. That's terrifying. To really think about machine learning as that is insane. And so what's really interesting with this AI that the David Brock has been working on, it's using concepts, intent, grammar, language, and an ontology to understand the words you say. When I say, I want to buy Apple stock, right? We know what that means. But like Apple, right? It could be two things. Apple could be a fruit, or it could be a company. This thing stores that and it understands it. So it stores it in apple.fruit, fruit.food, food.substance, substance.abstract, right? Then like company, apple.company, company.organization, organization.entity.
Schema.org. Are you familiar with like schema.org?
No. What's that?
It's like a basically like object-oriented programming is sort of like a classification, like object-oriented programming, like we classify things and it's like a class, right?
Right.
Well, it's kind of like that's reality, and that's kind of what we do. And kind of object-oriented program is based on like a thing of reality. Actually, the kernel of consciousness, that thing is like the kernel as a metaphor for consciousness, got me on this train of like Donald Hoffman and like multimodal user interface theory and fitness beats truth theory, which is a major fundamental frame now for me. It's actually probably the one.
Say so that like, what was that? I'm gonna write that down.
So there's Donald Hoffman, Case Against Reality is the book. Just read that. Like that'll do it. I'm only in the first chapter. Like I talk about these books as if I read all of them. Like most of the shit I read, it's like I'm halfway through because it's like I'm just trying to read so much. But so I kind of lost the thread, but I want to bring it back to this, and it's like painting a picture, and it's almost a thought experiment that ties into what you were saying about like the block and the granite, right?
Right.
Imagine consciousness. And then imagine just a white room, and it's just like consciousness in a white room. There's no difference.
Okay.
What is consciousness in that room? It's just like, imagine, like, put yourself in that room, in a white room, but there's nothing except your awareness.
Mm.
What is your awareness? So it's like almost like, I guess the only way to really think about that is like, if you've ever gone to a meditative state where like you're there,
Right.
And I don't know if I've ever even gotten there. Maybe I've gotten close, but like probably not, right? Like maybe monks 10,000 hours.
Right.
So there's that. So it's like literally, you like, the difference does make the difference. Like you have to have some sort of entropy, which is what difference is, because when you're talking about information theory, it is just measuring it. Information is entropy, and it's cool because like then you take that and you get to integrate an information theory, and you recognize that like, all right, we're maximizing like maximizing entropy is actually minimizing entropy, because entropy is a negative. So maximizing entropy is trying to get it to equilibrium, which is zero. We, being systems that are information systems, basically, we take it from zero and go above zero. And so integrated information theory measures systems that produce information. And then like, that's like, so we're the highest because we have like the most highest form of consciousness, the most integration of all of our networks.
Right.
And that's like what information theory is. And as 5 axioms of like information, it's pretty cool.
Okay.
What you're describing in terms of like, I lost it basically, but it's like the random process of like, just like a random process and like evolving, and it's like random.
Yep.
It's why it's like in that conversation with Jordan, like we kind of get to that. It's like, oh, this is the intersection of like random as fuck evolution, and then like intelligent design. And it's like, oh, it's consciousness, and it's just consciousness instantiating itself. And there's a thread there that ties into something that you were saying about the randomness, but it's like, oh, okay. It's not random.
Yeah.
Nothing random. Everything is by design, but like not in the sense of like, it's like not design like I know what I'm doing, right? It's design of like iterative integration.
Yes.
And it's
that kind of the idea of like growth of like you have
not growth for growth's sakes.
Yes.
Right. Like growth for the sake of being able to grow more in the future.
Right. Like it's I mean it more like I'm imagining like a flower or a plant that grows from a seed, and that like there's code there, and it says this is what's going to happen, but it doesn't know what the thing is going to look like at the end. It's just a generating thing, and that's what any kind of like computer generated like mountain ranges look like. It's if they're using fractal like just code, really it's like these algorithms that can generate these things that look these like amazing landscapes that are so detailed, but it's not like you're programming each individual thing or you know exactly what it's going to look like. It's just using a kind of a code. It's just all code.
Yeah. Well, and then you tie that into like I dropped in the E8 like it's like quantum gravity research, and like they have some really easy entryway, awesomely like produced videos that like that'll shatter your reality. So like one of them is like, what is reality? There's like 2 or 3 of them that are very similar, but they're worth all 3 watching because they'll give you different pieces of it.
Okay.
Tying that into like then thinking about crystals and fundamental structures and like what's going underneath the Planck length, like they have a decent like at least theory. It's like and that ties into the fitness beats truth, which is like literally the theory basically is it true? Yes or no? But it doesn't matter. Is it useful? Yes or no? And it matters. Yeah. It's like fitness, right? Like we are evolving to be adaptive for fitness in the ever-changing landscape.
Right.
Whereas like if you're evolving to be growth, that is actually maladaptive when the landscape shifts, and you will be destroyed.
Right. Great point.
Oh, that kind of brings into this idea. Okay, well, we'll just get weird with it. You have the background with the Protestant upbringing. So I had this thought and I tweeted about it. And it's another thought. I actually tweeted Jordan about it too, because it like ties into this idea, because he talks about his devil's bargain and like the devil's bargain, right? Imagine this. So we're talking about systems, right?
Yep.
So, and we can make it as complicated a system as simple as we want, scale invariant. But the second law of thermodynamics and the first law of thermodynamics, basically the first law of thermodynamics state like conservation of energy and mass, right? You cannot like create new energy.
Right.
Second law basically is like when you are transforming energy, no matter what, it's either going to be like maintained, but I don't even know if that's true. So that's like I'm just like, it basically, it's saying that no matter what, there's going to be some entropy loss in that system.
Right.
As you're moving forward through time, you're always like losing energy in some way. Like there's always some loss.
Right.
Fuck, I already lost it. Yeah.
What was like as it was going? Well, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I lost it. It was like quantum gravity research, something with. I got it back. Okay, are you familiar with Nassim Taleb?
Nassim Taleb. No, I know that name, but I don't know any of their work.
You're probably familiar with some of his concepts, like Black Swan, if you've heard that, like a Black Swan event. So he wrote.
No, I actually know. So I read I like these little. This is app called Lucid, and it's like these like quick little, great.
No, that's cool though. Yeah, just get little frames of it. So he has like anti-fragile and his
anti-fragile,
skin in the game. So he has this principle. It's called the Ana Karina Principle, and it's basically based upon the second law of thermodynamics. And it's basically this. It's like if you go to the grocery store and you pick up orange juice, you see on the back it's gonna be kosher orange juice. And the reason for that is because all people will drink kosher orange juice. Practicing Jews will not drink non-kosher orange juice. So the opportunity cost is just like, all right. So that's an instance where minority rules. But then it ties into Ana Karina, which I can't remember. It's one of the Russian. It's either Tolstoy or Dostoevsky, one of those two.
Okay.
And it's like it's a book. It's a novel, and the like opening sentence is basically like, all happy families are generally happy for similar reasons. All unhappy families are unhappy for like infinitely different reasons.
Yeah.
It ties into like systems, right? Good systems are going to have basically generally all the subsystems operating at a good level.
Yeah.
One subsystem being incorrect, right, is going to knock off and introduce entropy into that system, and then the whole thing will eventually collapse down to zero. Now let's take it to mythopoetic and let's go to Genesis. And let's think about Lucifer, right? Let's think about the fall of man, and Satan introduces entropy into the universe, right? And then on our earth, right, because we're still in community and connection with the infinite in the Garden of Eden,
right?
If however literal or figurative you want to take this, it's up to you. But like, we take the bite of the apple, okay, and then that's the disconnection, and then there's entropy introduced into the system, and now it's like our job is to try and like reverse that. Yeah,
that's big. I mean, well, that's where like this next kind of stage of thinking comes in, or like, is it possible to create a system in which it's easier to be a good person than it is to be a bad person?
Exactly.
That's the question. That system. That's what I think
the question. That's the question we're asking.
Stuff is asking is, can we create a system that makes it easier to be a good person than a bad one? And that's, again, through the mythopoetic lens, that is heaven on earth, is a place that people can live their best life and be good people to each other. And that's actually how you progress in society. There's a pathway that you can take. And like, if you want to go that way, it's by being a better and better person. Like, how does that system happen? Because that's what needs to happen. And we don't have those incentive structures organized at all right now.
And so it's the fundamental idea of like inversion. And so think about this. So right now we're just like, we don't think about time very well. We all generally, as society, we think about time linearly.
Right.
We take like the tenet idea and we like invert that, right? And we start thinking about intertemporal time. And then we think about the knowledge of good and evil. Okay. So we have that frame that we just laid out. Right. And then we tie this into the AI that I'm talking about in terms of like, literally the AI algorithm I describe is basically like, what it does is it uses like an imaginary, like it basically uses an imagination to run through some different probabilities and then up values as it goes through.
Okay.
But basically, if you think of your memory, you have like these past experiences, and we'll just call those states, right? These are past states of your conscious experience. Technically, they're called qualias, but we won't get technical here. So we'll just call those past states. Okay. Our current state is the present, right? We're always in that state. Okay. Then we have future states. So we're really confused in society, and it's because of this and our inability to understand time. And also like value. So each state has a particular value, and that's literally called the Q value. And that's, you can just map that to the value of the experience you're having in that state. That's literally all it is, Q value. All we're trying to do is maximize that Q value. That's all machine learning is doing. So you're talking about machine learning when it's trying to like learn about the a picture of a dog versus a wolf. Right. Well, the way to solve that is by changing the values that it's taking and the rewards it's getting for when it's assigning the different pixels.
Right.
And I can map this all the way to like how your eye works because it's isomorphic. Like, like it's those are designed on us, right? Not the other way around, which is interesting. Right. And that's something we forget. And it's like, oh, we think of like intelligence as like, oh, you have this great memory and like you can talk about all these things. It's like, it's not that. Intelligence is the fact that like you can actually like walk and like enjoy a sunset. Like that's intelligence. And like until you fundamentally believe that, okay, so we have this knowledge of good and evil. We bite into the apple. All of a sudden we're disconnected and now we have to figure shit out on our own. Right. Guess what we're not very well equipped to do? We're not very well equipped to do that. We're not infinite beings. We don't have the ability to think about all things at all time. Like we were connected to that. So then like we were channeling with that, but like, and you can see that like when you get in a flow state, you're learning at 275% faster. It's like Tesla says, you're connecting to the source. You're on an acid trip, right? Actually, they show like if you're microdosing acid, you're going to be pretty fucking productive, right? You're channeling, you're connecting to something, right? I like to think of this as a core in the center of the universe, right? That has all information and knowledge. And sometimes you get to hop on that thread and channel and siphon it off. And sometimes you don't. And the better that you get and the more you tune your instrument, boy, buddy, the more access you have to that. So like tune your fucking instrument, get resonant, right, with the universe. Then you're lit. So right now we have this problem where we don't understand the value of the current state we're in. And the reason is because at any given state in the future, you can come across information that's going to change the value not only of the current state you're in, but of the past state. And let me give you a really beautiful picture. And this is a really personal one. And this is like, I was in the Army and right before I went to basic training, I needed to get a watch to like run. And so my dad just ran out to the local Walmart. I just got a cheap little Timex, but then my dad got it too. And so he was like, yeah, cool. I'll work out too. So I went to basic training, got through basic training, went to AIT, basically got assigned to my unit in Savannah, Georgia, which was awesome. But I was only there for like a week or two. And then I was in Afghanistan for a year. Before I go, like my dad is the last one I see, right? And this is an interesting moment in my life because it's the first moment when I really come to realization that this might be the last time I see my dad.
It's big. Yeah,
it's real big. So I got to come home for R&R and that was like 2 weeks and it was around Christmas and holidays, a special time for me, but also I was just like a raging alcoholic during that entire time. But it was like fun, right? Like, you know, I was 23. So like coming back from war.
Been there.
Doing very much so what 23-year-olds do coming back from war. So, but me and my dad went to lunch. He told me a story and this is the value of new information. Okay. So this is why at any current state, you could come across new information that's going to shatter your brain and realign everything in your past to be positive for you. Okay. That's the power of new information. And let me give it to you. So my dad was like, a wholesaler for annuities and like in finance and that kind of stuff. I never know what he's doing. Right. So, but like, he's a good dude. So like not in like the nefarious way. Like he's just like, his whole thing is people helping people, law of reciprocity. He hammered that into us, right? Like karma, basically what goes around comes around. Right. Attitude of gratitude.
Nice.
And so he told me this story and he was like, I was at a lunch with a client and he had just met with one of my competitors and the dude they like saw him walking out and it's like, you know, $100,000 Mercedes. He had like a $10,000 Rolex. And so he sat down with the guy and the guy was like, you know, they're talking about the business. Like, you know, I was just meeting with your competitor and you're really a lot different than him. Like he's kind of flashy, but like, you know, he's a good dude. And it's like, you're very different. Like, you know, even your watch, like he was like, he had a $10,000 Rolex, you're wearing a Timex. He's like, oh, cool. Well, I'm going to tell you a story. And actually he goes, I'm going to tell you the value of new information. And so like, that $10,000 Rolex, you think that watch is really valuable to him.
Right.
I'm going to tell you how this watch is more valuable for me. Right. So right now, literally, my son is in Afghanistan. Okay. I got this watch. When me and my son went right before he went to basic training. Right. And that he told the story. And it's like, so every time I look at the watch, it reminds me. I say a prayer for my son while he's in Afghanistan.
Wow.
He told me that story and it just like, obviously, like, I was like, oh my God.
That's beautiful.
You don't really like, also like me and my dad, we always had a pretty good relationship. There's rough times and like, you don't really consider like, it's like, he's your dad. It's like, of course my dad loves me, but you don't really think about it.
Yeah.
And then like, that was a moment where I was like, oh man. So when I got in my trouble, like my whole thing was like, I got in trouble. I got kicked out of UT. I got suspended. I was kind of struggling. was trying to get in the Army, but I was like, I did something stupid with a buddy and like got a misdemeanor charge, and it was like long drawn out. And at this time, the military was really challenging to get into. And so like I wanted to go into the Navy, and I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. And like
Yeah.
there was watches that were like in GQ that were like NTM ops special operator watches, and they're like $500 or $800. I was like, oh, those are so cool. I want one of those. I couldn't get into the Navy. Even like I scored the highest you can score like on the entry test, right? But they're like, listen, dude, you have a charge. So until the judge drops the charge, you can't get in the Navy.
Right.
And then the judge was like, well, until you're in the Navy, I won't drop the charge. So it's like this 18-month quagmire of liminal, like I'm just like,
wow,
19, 20, like fuck.
Yeah.
What am I doing with my life? And but then eventually, like, yeah, so I got in the Army eventually a couple years later. So coming back from Afghanistan, I have a bunch of money saved up. Right before I left, like I planned it out so I would have it. So then when I saw my dad, I bought 2 of those MTM watches, one for me and one for him. And like that was like a huge moment for us,
Beautiful.
So that's what you can do with new information. And that's like, okay. And this just ties into like this concept of like Bayesian probability and Bayesian updating. And then like honestly, there's a theory of quantum Bayesian cognitive theory, which is like we basically, as we have a classical computer in our brain, but our brain is in a quantum state. And so what we do is when we're using our imagination to envision the future, we're literally violating the law of total probability. And it's because we're like imagining different futures and giving different probabilities to those. And that process is considered a quantum interference. And basically where you're using the quantum interference to orient to one path where then all of a sudden you make a decision and then everything collapses and then it's one and it's within the law of total probability. And that's like the actual kind of like process we're doing in the brain. It's like, okay, so if that's the actual process, then that's like take that up a level of abstraction. It's like, let me like, and I like the very beginning of this conversation, imagine the end at the beginning, right? Invert it. Imagine your expectation of free energy in each state going forward. And then as you're moving forward through time, continue to update as you get new information, right? And that can change the value, not only of the future, but of the past. And then the bad shit, your trauma, everything can then work in such a way that all the arrows and entropy that was taking you down is now lifting you up. And that's when you're like in the realization, and Jordan said it, and what this conversation also is a part of that, which is like the new gospel. It's like the new religion, where it's this understanding that the only thing out of alignment in the universe is me. Everything else is perfect. I'm the only thing that's out of alignment. So I just need to focus on getting back in alignment.
Right.
Then once I'm a crystal in alignment, like Jordan said, with that beautiful parable of the
freezing water. That was great.
Unbelievable. And it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. No wonder my relationship with my parents and my family, and like I'm having an amazing conversation with a dude that I don't even know, but it's just like the connection is instant just because like you're resonating.
Yeah. That's so, man, there's just so much of this that like it feels extremely refreshing and like
it's like lifted off.
Yeah, it's like this sati, this remembering of like how great it feels to be in a deep, vulnerable, and authentic connection with another person. There's that I'm getting right now, and I'm also getting this like all of the things that I personally have had a lot of shame about because of my hospitalizations, all of these things I've been thinking about that I've been like using the world around me as this whiteboard to play with while they were like, what the fuck is going on with this kid? And like all of that is with this past information kind of reintegrating back with my current self and being like, it's okay, right? Like all of that is completely okay. Like, yes, it was stressful. Yes, it had a lot of effect on a lot of people, but it's okay. And like, this is leading to where I am now, and it's leading to where I will be in the future. And like, it's just very, so I want to thank you again for taking this call. And like, I very much am appreciative of this opportunity to kind of like reconnect with or reconnect, who knows, but connect with another person who is so similarly kind of aligned and on a similar path in one way or another. right? Like I feel like we have both been in this kind of meat grinder of like what the fuck is going on, and then oh, okay, I don't know exactly what it is, but like I see the bubbles going up, right? Like Jordan was talking about, like we're both swimming towards the bubbles going up, and I think I really, it's refreshing to find another person like that. So that's really cool.
What's so powerful about that it comes to my mind. So think we're talking about the lightning strike, right? We're talking about bubbles and oxygen. As soon as oxygen came online in the universe, life exploded.
Yes.
Right? It's like as soon as you're ready, the universe like forces everything to be in alignment with you. Like it just happens. And I said Satori earlier, and it's interesting. So it's like this idea of like, you know what? Start believing in coincidences because actually it might be useful. And so so Satori is this concept, and it's literally it's like a Buddhist concept. It's sudden enlightenment. It's like that sudden. It's rising to the gamma, right? It's the neural connect. It's literally called binding, where literally the neural connections in your brain are connecting in such a new formation that it's like boom, like click.
Yeah.
When I was in Indiana, the apartment complex I lived in, Satori Flats.
Ha! Love that.
And like I had like, like probably 7 or 8 like earth shattering, like paradigm shattering realizations up there. And like a large part of where I am on this journey was formulated in a journal just like this up there. And I didn't even realize it. Like it was like, it's like also cool. It's like you almost get to look in the mirror every once in a while and you see the progress you've made.
Yes.
Whereas sometimes you look in the mirror and it's like, oh, you see how old you've gotten.
Right.
And it's like, I got one of those where it's like, oh, I looked at my journal and like went through it, self-referencing, right? Updating past states with new information and updating current states with old information that actually helps with the new, right? Strange loops. Yep. And I noticed that like where I was exactly where I had basically planned on being.
Yeah.
Without even knowing. And then like last night, me and my buddy, we went on a nice, awesome walk. It was a beautiful day here in Austin. Went down by the lake, went out, had a couple beers. Great night. Came back. We kind of realized like, oh my God, dude, like he was the guy I was talking about that we set up on that journey of like building up this business and everything.
Yep.
We both realized last night where we are is like better than where we could have even possibly imagined where we could have been had we gone down that path. Both of us simultaneously as like 2 different nodes. Yeah. So then it's cool. It's like, all right, you woke up, I woke up, you get online, and then it's like just naturally like these nodes will just start gravitating towards each other.
Right.
It becomes inevitable. Yeah. And now it's like, okay, this is cool because it's like, and I've noticed this, right? So it's like me and my buddy Lester, like we were 2 nodes that were disparate, exact same. Like you'll meet him and like the conversation will be, him and I are very similar, and then like, but then you'll find the intersection of where you and him are similar.
Yeah.
But then it's like, all right, so then that me and him are a node and connect network, right? And then there's another node that just came online, right? Now maybe there's another node that came online. It's like, ooh, where are we converging to?
Right. This consilience, right? This kind of idea of like, where is everything leading, right? Like it's we're all kind of sliding down the hill, like, ooh, hey, you're coming too, all right, like, whoa, what's going on? So like, it's just exciting to know that. Even if it's almost more exciting to know that like maybe we will never stop anywhere, and that like it's literally just this infinite growth of connectedness between others. Like that's so cool to think about. But like because I was always in this mindset in the past of like, oh, if I just do this, then I'll be happy, or I'll be blah blah blah, like this goal-oriented end process. And
if then,
yes, exactly.
It never comes. It's always now.
Yes, this whole idea of the process being the
journey. I literally have a note, and it's the journey is the destination.
Yep, exactly. And it's such a like it's to some people it's like, oh yeah, okay, I've heard that. Yeah, okay. And it's like, but then like when you're living it and then you realize it, and then it's like,
the cliches hide the deepest truths.
Yeah, exactly. And I also think like, and that's why I do think like this kind of idea, this mythopoetic idea of reinstantiating heaven on earth, right? Of this reversing entropy, like that there's so much layered underneath that of like, wait, we could harness that and like utilize that even just as a frame, right? Of like building heaven on earth or something like that, that like a lot of people are familiar with, but like forgot about. And like they can orient towards, if it's simple enough, of like orienting towards doing good with others, like, and a system that's instantiated to help people do that.
Making good the only option.
Yes. If that like that, and that's there. I've ran through a bunch of different kind of ways of doing this, and a lot of them are like very basic, and a lot of them are very like childish. But I think that concept, with the help of other people like yourself, and like other people that are thinking like this, like, I mean, it's not new. Like Jordan Hall's been thinking about this since 2012. Like this is game B. This is game B. But it's the idea of, is there a, like, what does the framework look like that supports the growth of this, like the scaffolding that supports the vines to grow up,
Protocols.
the
Yeah.
protocols, what are the protocols, what does it look like?
The framework. Yeah, the scaffolding. I love that. And honestly, I think like, so this type of conversation, the conversation like with Jordan, right?
Yep.
I think there's a form that's beginning to sort of like form, and it's a matter of like getting that to crystal.
Yes. Crystal's great. I really love that framework too. That's a really good one of like, how does this thing, oh, got it, right?
Pattern, right? Okay. And then it's repeatable and it's scalable.
Yes.
And like that's like fractal almost.
Yep.
And
there's something about the smart villages with this. There's something about
I went on that train. I was like, I was convinced I was going to go back to school to be an architectural engineer to then do like either the earthen homes or like the because like container homes. Cause I lived in a container in Afghanistan. Like, I literally had the idea of like, all right, with my boss in Indiana, I was like, let's do container homes for homeless vets.
Yep.
He like literally talked to the governor of Indiana and was like, if you want to do this, and I was like, I can't do that.
I also was thinking about similar things, and the daughter of David Brock has this thing called Blessed Children, and like the whole idea is refitting these shipping containers to be like schools and places for people in Haiti. Like that was like a whole idea, like this whole nonprofit that's coming up.
Oh my God.
I kind of took that and ran with that idea a little bit to be something even more, where you could have these like a village of these shipping containers that were
modular communities
that were outfitted with solar panels that generated more energy than was
necessary.
And then the people work in that community to keep it going, and then they split the profits of the stuff that comes out. Like there's all these kind of like very rough, very like raw ideas that I think are so important to just throw out there, and then like see what happens with the community like this that are all thinking in this way of like, how do we get a generative kind of world?
It's like flows. And so here's one major issue for me. It's always been like cash flow, right? And I've never been good with money. And so like finally when I moved to Indiana, like I like quarantine didn't change my life at all because I didn't go out. I had the same routine basically. So like I basically got my life down to where like I am literally basically going to be my right now I'm going to school full time, right?
Yeah.
I'm living off the GI Bill. Like I have X amount of savings, but like also like I'm not like a rich dude. I don't have like money to throw a bunch of different things. But I recognized, oh, wait a minute. That's not the only value I provide. Actually, that's the least amount of value that I'm ever going to provide to a situation right now. Right. So then what can I do to maximize some skills that I have that might provide value? Right. And it's like getting people to that realization. It's like, dude, it's not about money. Yep. It's like, that's what I'm realizing even in this conversation right now. Cause I'm thinking like, all right, man, like, hey, I got to tell you, I don't have a lot of money. I'm not like,
oh yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, it's just a dude that like talks to talk about what I think about. Like really, it was like, if I could just situate my life where I can just get paid for my like thinking, like probably living my best life. So how can I do that? It's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just start talking to people and then let's see what happens. Yeah. There's one thing I wanted to bring in that's kind of cool, and it ties in a couple different things, and it just shows how much we are on the same sheet of music. This is from a journal entry from May 3rd, 2019, or June like 3rd, 2019.
Okay.
And this ties into exactly this conversation. It's and then on the concept of hell, is on the day you die, you are shown your optimal path.
Right.
I used to really, really like that, but I think I misunderstood it for a long time. So be very careful with that thought. It can lead to some bad conclusions. I think the better outlook is to be conscious of that potentiality, but not to worry about it. Do not worry about heaven or hell while you're alive. You'll never be able to know. And by wasting precious time, you're missing out on the bits of heaven on earth.
Mm-hmm.
Much more worthy a task to bring heaven back to earth, or to make earth a heaven, than to worry about going there when you die. If you're going to do that, you might as well just save everyone the trouble, resources, space, and mystery. The only way to know to solve, yeah, it's like, what did I say? That's the only way to know to solve it. And this is just adjacent possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, I mean, again, even just reimagining what death means, right? What is death, the physical body or the ego, right?
Exactly.
Like when you have ego death and you come by, then you're in like heaven. I mean, you're building heaven, because
that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's that's the phrase. And I got this from Naval. I said it in the conversation with Jordan. It's every person lives two lives. And the second begins when they only realize they have one. And that's the ego.
That's a good one. Nice.
Yep. Right. Kill your ego, you are losing two lives, and then you die.
Right.
If you do kill your ego, then the real life begins.
Yeah. That's powerful.
And like, oh, dude, and that's it. It's like, okay, so ego, right? That's a major fundamental problem in society. Right. What's underneath that, right? There's an element of control, but then what's underneath that? And it's fear. So solve for fear. If you can solve for fear, and that's the thing of like, if you can be comfortable being uncomfortable, if you can be lost, but you're never lost because you're always lost,
right?
You solved it.
Well, think about it with fear in terms of like, why, if a vine that is meant to grow upwards could not grow upwards, like that would be its fear, is that it's not able to grow upwards, right? But if we can provide a scaffolding that's not the current scaffolding, it has nothing to fear because it's doing what it naturally wants to do, and it's flourishing, right?
Oh God, dude, that's so beautiful. That's a beautiful analogy, dude.
I love that one. That's a really good one. I'm happy with that, actually. Yeah, that's. But then it's like, how? All right, so I'm gonna spitball what it looks like, and I think it's gonna be a network of ethical AI companions that all talk to each other, understand each other, and the ethical AI companion, its goal is to understand you in the best way possible,
dude,
and what you want. Like your guardian angel.
What's that movie where it's like your senses on the inside? It's like a Pixar movie.
Oh, Inside Out, right? No, yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, Inside Out's a great one. That's a, but like all of the sad, happy, all these different things. Like if there was a way so that the ethical AI could understand who you are, meet you, and Tristan Harris is talking about this on a podcast with Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah.
It was on his mat. It's really good, and this is what like I was like, oh, I'm so glad you said that, because like I've been thinking about this, and it's finally like it's happening. Like I think that this is a pathway that we can. It's in the zeitgeist now, but like imagine if this angel was literally like, I know what's best for you and I can help you, and like let me help you do that, because I know that this angel of like Justin Wallander, right? Like you guys, I scheduled a meeting for you guys in your free time because I know you're gonna get along. And it's like, all right, cool, perfect. Cool. And like it's because there's understanding of the common threads of data, and like it's so simple. It's such a simple thing, but if there's understanding of that.
I'm going to paint the picture of like how we're already kind of doing it.
Yeah.
All right. So for me, right, Rome research, that's a huge thing for me. And like that upped my learning exponentially.
Yep.
And so basically what it did though is because I like when I read, I always have this fear I'm going to forget.
Right.
And like literally all fear is almost self-actualization.
Right.
Like, right. If I'm afraid to go talk to that girl, she's going to reject me. My fear of rejection is me rejecting myself.
Right.
I'm afraid of success, then I'm going to fail because shit. This happens all the time where I lose it. Fear.
We were talking about the scaffolding, the vine growing up, what it looks like in AI being ethical and helping you, and then
Rome
into
research.
Rome research.
And as you can see, why I have the fear of forgetting, because I can be in a mid thread and forget immediately.
Yep.
So it's like I have ADHD basically,
yep.
probably. Well, that's a finger. I don't think that's a real thing.
Right.
Fear of forgetting. What Rome does now for me though is I've now gotten all the flows of information captured in Rome basically. So it's like if I'm reading something, if I write it in here, I have a day set where I transpose from this to there, right? If I'm reading on my iPad or in the Kindle, I highlight it, automatically imports, getting everything in there. So now it's like now literally I don't even care. It's like sometimes I'm reading it, now I'm literally following my curiosity as if they're breadcrumbs of my future self, like for real, in the sense of like I'm reading something and if I'm interested, I get into it and then I'm taking notes just naturally. It's just natural. I don't have to think about it. It's like, oh, I need to study and read. It's like, oh, I want to do that.
Yes.
But then if I don't want to do that, I know that like, oh, I can just skim this and highlight some of the interesting things. And then I can just really dig in later. Some future version of me, I just need to capture it. Yeah. And that's the thing. And that's why it's like, okay, I trust Rome. Rome is a safe space for me.
Yes.
So then if you can get that idea of like the trust, because that's the thing that we're fundamentally lacking. And that's like the disintegration, right? When we're not connected, I don't trust, like, right? Like I don't trust you, right? I don't know you, right? But right now we're in this connection. It's like, oh, there's some trust here. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like, so it's a matter of like, all right, solve for fear, but really what are you solving for fear is building trust, right?
Yeah. And trust is fundamental. I mean, it's a fundamental thing that needs to happen before anything else can happen, really, is having trust.
All right, here we go. And then it ties into the conversation, and this is good. So at first it's you and the recognition that you have these different qualities, right? And like, so you have shadows. It's a matter of integrating those shadows so that you're conscious of them. And it's like, sometimes I'm an asshole and I'm an egotistical dick, right? That's just who I am.
Yep.
And there's certain launch sequences that you could say certain patterns of words that's going to launch that for me. And even though I know that consciously and like I should be able to control that, I sometimes choose not to, right? And it's a decision that I'm making a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Actually, every time. Mm-hmm. It's recognizing that about me. Then it's inverting it. And it's recognizing, oh, also Jared's the same way. Like he has qualities and he might be hungry or tired or upset, right? There might be something, and it's like recognizing that like we're not so different. We both like there's different things and systems and aspects of our lives that are at any given moment either stressing us or causing us to be happy or sad or whatever emotion. And it's like, okay, understand that, have a little grace, have a little mercy, have a little forgiveness, right? That's the thing. It's like, all right, here's the thing. The devil introduced entropy into the system. Mm-hmm. If we can get society to forgive the devil, can we invert the flow of entropy to energy for society?
If we can get society to forgive the devil by introducing entropy, what do you think that looks like?
So can you forgive the devil? Who is the devil in your life? Who is the devil?
The devil in the person's life. Yeah.
Yes. Can you forgive that person first? Right. Can you forgive Hitler? Right. Can you go all the way up the stack? If you're God, can you forgive the devil?
Right.
And if the answer is yes, then that's probably you're on the right track. Yeah. Or if the answer is not no, right? The answer is I can never forgive that person. Right. As long as that's not the answer, then you're on the right track. Yeah. Then it's a matter of new information, updating past states.
Yep. Right. I think it's a scaling thing, because it's like if you zoom out far enough and you can understand what it is, and you don't flavor it with whatever thing that you have on your psyche at the time of like, oh, it's because of this or it's because of that. Like you look at the entropy like that the devil introduced, like, yeah, you arguably made this whole thing possible. Like spice, like you have a soup.
Exactly. The friction. Go to the friction. Go to the difference.
Yeah, it's like it's literally making this. So like, yes, I'm sure in other places it is perfect and everything is amazing, but like we're not in that. We're in a place where there is this constant dynamic and this constant what I literally just listened to this on the this Sundance thing. It's called The Glitch in the Matrix, which is really great. It was just theory. It's incredible. But they were talking about they're basically they're basically rivalrous AI that kind of go, one is supposed to,
GANs.
what's that?
General adversarial networks.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. But like, that's us, right? Like we are doing that. Like there's in all things, like the police and the robbers, the this, the that, the this, like that whole dynamic is
in my room. I have that thought right now.
incredible.
All right, here's a thought. And it's like, yeah, dude, it's a mess. Hey, guess what? Guess when you really feel good sometimes? After cleaning up a mess. It feels really fucking good to clean my room sometimes, right? Particularly because I don't do it very often. But once I get it all organized and then if you think about your environment that you're in is just the instantiation of your psyche, like subconscious basically around you, right?
Yep.
So if I'm like cluttered and cloudy in my head, there's a good chance I got a lot of laundry I got to do.
Oh yeah.
Do the laundry, the process, like wash the dishes, right? You can almost get in a meditative state through the warmth of the water and the runningness. If you listen to some music, right? Smoke a little weed, whatever you do, right? And like get in that state, use that, right? And that's like, I call this like, we already have habits. So one thing I did and it changed me, and this is like a practical thing that people can start thinking about. And it's like, all right, my habit after I got home from work was sitting down and just vegging out and watching TV. I didn't want to do anything. And like, that's a kind of a mode that I've always been in since I was a little kid. I like went all the way back. I was like, oh, yeah, I got home from school. I just kind of vegged on the couch and just chilled. Never did my homework, right? And it's like, because that wasn't the time for me to do that. That was me veg time. So then it's like, how can I that's a habit that's been ingrained in me. And it's like, probably not changing that. So instead of going against the flow, why don't I try and ride the flow? So what can I do to upgrade the behavior that I'm doing in that time? And that's like, okay, so instead of watching YouTube or instead of watching Netflix, started watching YouTube, right? Got into Jordan Hall, got into Rebel Wisdom, got into Jamie Wheel, got into Stephen Kotler, got into Jason Silva, got into Eric Weinstein, the whole rabbit holes that I went down that had formed thoughts in my mind that I'm spewing right now that aren't my own, that, and then it's like, okay, I started reading some of the books that they were talking about, right? And then I found like, I like reading. And then I like, now it's like some amalgamation of like academic papers and crazy, off the wall, stuff that I'm trying to like, okay, I have this mental framework. Can I add more things into it to see what I can configure and then try and bring that to a person like Jordan Hall and say, hey, here's a toy I made. What do you think?
Right.
And it's like, hey, cool. Awesome. Now I'm getting some unbelievable feedback from that. It's like, I just want to keep doing that. All right, let me build some more toys. Hey, Jared, this conversation is a toy that we just built, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. How can we do more of this? And then how can we bring more people into it? And then like, now we're playing with Legos, dude. And I'm living my dream.
Now we're playing with Legos, baby. So true. I've been a huge Lego fan my whole life too. So I'm very, very much love that kind of connection. And I think that as you were talking about that, like, I just couldn't help but re-dig back into like my first insight back in 2018 about incentivizing learning or incentivizing I say learning because there's not a good enough word for it, but it's incentivizing being. I love that, of like, it's literally pointing somewhere else other than make money, right? Like this capitalistic drive that we are always focused on in today's society. We are incentivized to focus on making money because that's what works. That's the game that we're playing in society right now. Open letter to all billionaires out there: change the game, make a new game, and make that game one where, in order to win, you do good things, or you focus on growth, or you do, like, there's so many things you could do that could help make a better existence for people that are stuck in the way they are right now and that they can't find a way out. And so like, if there was a system that could get to know the person, meet them exactly where they are, and bring them up, and in the process of bringing them up, they are earning money, or they are like, they can get more things, they can get access to all these like it's so clear in my head, and yet it's
because I see it too, but I'm like, right, is the picture I'm seeing in my head mapping to yours? So I mean, good God, I mean, the movie Her, that's a pretty good movie.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And like, so here's one thing we have to be careful, because you don't want a Facebook situation. You watch like Social Dilemma, and it's like, right. But then like what you fundamentally realize, and I think the case you laid out with, what's the gentleman that you're working with?
David L. Brock.
Elbrock. Okay. Yeah, you guys are recognizing that. Yeah, Facebook is a paperclip maximizer. That
Right.
is what that algorithm is doing, and it will continue to do it and not ever stop, because that is how its function is optimizing.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, all right, yeah, you guys are already. So then, what do these systems look like? What like is there stuff like, is it already being done? Like, are there algorithms that we're already using? Like, um, calendar type stuff, notes, like how are we capturing my thoughts and like my feelings, right?
Right.
In a frictionless way, that way, like I don't have to do much effort, right? Maybe
Yes.
a little bit, because a little friction is good, right? Like a
Right.
little noise in the system actually has to happen in that algorithm for the learning to be optimal,
Right.
right? You need a
Right.
little bit of random perturbation in order to get the optimal stuff. Like,
Yep.
um, yeah, yeah, like
Yeah,
where are
but
you guys at?
it's like Facebook was the first scaffolding for vines that was built by man, right? Like let me out the first one, but like let's just imagine it like that in the
Yes.
attentionist economy, right? Where it's like we learned that that can happen, and it's like, oh wow, but we are growing in the complete wrong direction, or we are just this is wild how this is going,
It's an
right?
overgrown rose bush.
It's an overgrown rose bush. It is like there's just so much, but we know that it's possible in today's day and age to do something like that. And so like how first off, how do you ungrow the vine? Like you don't do that. You have to point it in a different direction, or you have to provide something else to where if you transfer that vine over, it can still flourish, or it can still grow into the sun and be something greater. Like there's
Yeah.
gotta be, using the current systems, the current technologies, some way to orient
Integrating them.
ourselves towards good. And I'm determined that
Yeah.
I think in my own life that will be one of the primary paths that I take with my efforts, and that looks like talking like to people like you.
I like, yeah, I'm gonna tether my boat to that, because
Yeah,
like absolutely, like that's the thing, that's a solution.
right. But it's the working together with people who are thinking just like this, or thinking like,
It doesn't, yeah, like so are you familiar with Tim Urban?
no.
Oh, well, that's so he has a blog called Wait But Why, and he like writes long form. So he
Oh,
talks
maybe.
about like SpaceX and like Tesla and Neuralink, and he has amazing stuff. But he had a really good one on like This Is Us, and it's like basically society.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful frame, and it's like thinking, but basically like thinking in 3D.
Yep.
And you can apply it to politics, right? So right now, most of us think in terms of right versus left, and it's very linear,
Yes.
right? But
Yep.
it's in also now add the 3D element. So add the y-axis, and it's like, what level are you at? And
Yes.
so the high level is like scientists and engineers, where it's like, yeah, I have my preferences, but also like I can hold the other and give valid,
Right.
like good information is good information, right?
Defending it. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, as you go further down, right? Like now you have a sports fan. So it's like, I like the smart sports fan. It's like, I'm rooting for my home team, but like I
Right.
enjoy the game, right? So it's like we're here to play. Then you have the rabid sports fan,
Yep.
right? And it's like that's like the majority of the society. We're just trapped in this negative loop and
Yep.
negative feedback and noise system that like we can't break out.
Yeah.
And what you're describing are people that are more on like the sports fan, like science engineer type.
Right.
Like I'm probably a sports fan, right? I have my rooting interest. I'm a Texan through and through.
Yeah.
Like don't attach yourself to identity. I'm pretty well attached to Texas. Sorry.
Right.
Right. And but that's like that's the thing. And so then that's like twofold, right? So then it's about orienting to people that are at a similar level or higher level,
Yeah.
right? And then how do we extend the ladder down to bring people up?
Yes. And
And
like
that's
that's exactly, and like without sounding too like condescending, like it's something where like if you
information.
see the vine getting tangled in itself on the ground, and like you are not tangled, or like you are getting more sunlight, and like and to provide the scaffolding to get there, like the plant will grow that way naturally because it's following what it's built to do. And like just like that whole rabbit, like we've had millions of years of competition of like, yeah, like rooting for my team, like point that towards something good. Like, oh, I'm rooting for my team to like, you know, tackle climate change or something. Like, I don't know, like you pick whatever your thing is.
Hey,
and like
we're on the same team, Earth. Root for Earth.
Team Earth, right? There you go. Like, can you shift the frameworks so that we are thinking about things that are that bring us together in a way in a way that like it can there you still it's not getting rid of any of these basic drives. Like it's something that makes people yeah, we want to have people
find your instrument, right? Like my instrument might be a violin, you might play the piano or the guitar, right? And then someone might play the piano and the drums. And hey, guess what? If we find in each other, we have a fucking band. And if we're all pretty good and we all like have the same vibes, we're making good music. And guess what? If it's good music for us, that's in and of itself enough. But odds are it might be good music for other people. So then let's share it, right? Get some more perspective. Maybe we'll get some feedback. It's positive that encourages us to go. Maybe we'll get some negative criticism and it's like, oh, that will help us get better. And that's what you want to do, go do it, right? But if you're not a musician and you're a farmer, right? Or if you're an AI researcher, or if, you know, whatever your, you know, instrument is, whatever your cross is, like, don't buy into what society is telling you it is first, right? Like, get that out of your head. Like, go back to when you were a kid. What did you do? What did you like playing with? What were interesting to you, right? What were the subjects in school that you like naturally were good at? That just kind of clicked in your mind. Right? Think about those things. Ask those questions. Ask your parents, right? Ask your old teachers if you still have those, right? Ask people that knew you, right? Like, and it's like some people don't have that, right? Some people are orphans, some people this. So, okay, find a way to then, like, maybe it's not you, then go read about Tesla, read his autobiography, right? Interface with the dead, right? Maybe you don't have the live living people, but guess what? You have dead ancestors, and they have knowledge that you need. And then it's a matter of just like, so then, okay, a lot of the problems we get into these types of stuff is like the hierarchy. And it's like, oh, I'm a white belt. Oh, I'm a yellow belt and you're a white belt, right? And like that, like there's some, and that's the military, right? But there's a reason for that in the military. And when you get into like the higher echelon and like special forces, which I did not, but I was close enough to that to where I had exposure. I wanted to. So like in my head, I was like, oh, I'm gonna try. And it's like, it's not a matter of hierarchy. It's a matter of when shit hits the fan, this is the order that things fall into. And that's it. It's a matter of order, not a matter of I am better than you because I'm higher. Right. It's just like, guess what? I'm, you know, I'm 60 years old. I've lived this life. Right. And I have all this information. And then guess what? I got pretty good at integrating it. So now I have wisdom. So now I can just share it with you. It's not a judgment thing. Like, dude, hey, when I was your age, I was 10 times worse than you. Right. Like, for real. And also because we didn't have the framings that you have now, because we had to build it so that you could have it, right? So it's like, hey, man, I get it. I get where you are. And like, I had this exact dynamic with my brother when we were up in Indiana, because he was in a similar space. He's 8 years younger than me. And like, so it's cool too, because like I have a brother that's 8 years younger than me and a brother that's 13. So it's like, I almost get to orient like through a range from like 40 to 15 in terms of like,
it's a great perspective of seeing what's coming up too, like what perspectives are kind of like looking like in the kind of zeitgeist of that age group, you know?
Oh, and so for me, it's like, I'm kind of like childlike, like I'm kind of a kid. Like I'm a basically. Yeah. And like, I always sort of like, people are like, oh, that's immaturity and that kind of thing. And then I just realized it's like, oh no, actually the reason is that's because I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And so all of my life, I've just been around kids and I've always just enjoyed playing with kids. And it's like, well, duh. It's like, okay, cool. Now that I realize about that, that's not a detrimental thing. That's a thing. And it's like, that's the thing about ego too. Everything's basically duality almost, but it's not, because it's integrated, because it's one coin. There's 2 sides, right? So we have the negative side of ego, which is fear and control. Then the positive side is the self-love. And it's like, if you use the positive side, then that's the catalyst, right? To then get you to improve. But if you're in the negative loop, then the thing is, get to 0. And then if you're not at the negative loop, let's say you're on the good loop. So like guys like me and you, like I'm very much so a lone wolf type. So very much so I was in my, like, imagine if I actually, while I'm on this journey, if I was thinking out loud 2 years ago? Where would I be now?
Great
Right.
point.
So it's like, all
But
right,
also, like, what was that even the right time to think out loud, right? Like,
exactly.
it's
And it
probably
might
not
make,
the right.
well, that ties into the adjacent possible. And that's why that's such a beautiful frame where it's like, okay, the adjacent possible is basically you're bounded by the access you have dependent upon your sovereignty as an individual, your
Right.
ability to have agency on the environment around you and absorb information, right? So there's that component. Then where you are in terms of locality, right?
Yep.
Not only in times of like space, but also time.
Yeah.
And then your access to resources given those constraints.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, well, that's why we can't judge history because like you have to, in order to judge history, unravel, invert every single thing back to that point and then literally put yourself in that space, in that adjacent possible.
Right.
And it's like, oh, if you do that, yeah, of course. If I were to be back in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, odds are, given basic probability that I understand, I'm Nazi German, right?
Yeah.
Like that's just basic probability.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't support it, right? But it's just like I live in America right now. Whatever happens in this regime, right? I'm an
Right.
American, and it's like I guess I don't know. I guess in my not like lack of support either way, also like non-support, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we're all basically what I'm getting at is we're all fucking part of the problem.
Yeah.
So might as well, hey, wake up, take up your cross, right?
Right.
Find your responsibility.
Yep.
And guess what? It sounds like a burden. It's fucking not. It's fun.
It's a blast.
It's a real blast to have conversations with
Yep.
like this and like
Yep.
then also understand the fact that, ooh, okay, it's not just this conversation. It's like, what's this conversation about to springboard us to?
Yes.
And that's
a big
fucking
thing. And like I've always, ever since I kind of like, you know, learned about Jordan Hall, learned about this whole like, I mean, I literally made a slideshow saying like major players in humanities transition, right? And I just, you know, Daniel Schmachtenberger, like John Vervaeke, Jordan Hall, Jim Rutt, like big, you know, and like I've just always had this like vision in my head of like somehow eventually I'm going to be working with these people. Like I know that. I know
oh
it's
my
going to
God.
happen.
Literally.
And yeah.
Literally in my head, it was like, okay, in somewhere in the next 10 years, my path is gonna intersect with Jordan Hall.
Yeah.
I just need to like I swear this is my mental model basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, at some point, so I just need to be preparing for when that happens. Right? And it just so happened that I was 1 year into the 10-year plan and it happened. And it was because of a very good friend of mine, the friend I was talking about, she's struggling.
Yeah.
She's also like one of the sweetest, like most caring people. Like basically she like fills everyone else's cup, but then she has a leak in hers. Right. And it's like, all right, we got to refill yours too. Like, cause that's better. Right.
Yeah.
Then it's like, we're all full.
Yeah.
She reached out to Jordan Hall in a cold email and like, I don't even know what she said. I'm not even ever going to ask because it's like, if she wanted to tell me, she would have.
Yeah.
Basically Jordan responded to her and was like, I never respond, but yeah, I'd love to meet with Incredible. Justin. Yeah.
I think I remember him talking about that in a video of that specific, like, I think he was talking about your interaction in one of his videos of like,
oh really? Because I've like,
yeah,
since our conversation, I've almost purposely not been like watching any of his recent stuff just because I don't want to have his frames and then be regurgitating his own frames.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
Because I've already do that because most of my frames, like literally, dude, I would watch like his YouTube videos on a loop on the weekends, like fall asleep to them to the point where like I would go back and watch one. I'd have a thought in my journal that I wrote. Then like 2 weeks later, I'd watch one of his videos that I'd like skipped over.
Yeah.
And it would be that exact thought. And I'd be like,
yeah. Well, it's funny like when you really think about like what is an original thought, right? Like it's very, very like what is that defined as? Because like you look at like even just creativity, like all art is like just regurgitated, like it's this kind of like
7 notes.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. It's finding and resonating with in the same way, like like you can have those notes and play them on a solo or a this or that, and like there are motifs and there are certain vibes, and like to the creativity, I guess, comes from playing. And this is a regurgitated thought, but it's playing enough like when you're playing a piano, like you memorize scales and you memorize other songs first to a point where you get to be able to be comfortable enough to solo and to play and to jazz, you know, like to
You're
jam.
integrating the instrument to the
Right,
point where it's not there anymore.
right. And like that, there might be, even when you think it's not original, there's still so many. I think it's a little naive to think that there's over the all of the years of your life and the things that you don't remember, like there isn't some of that coming back up, right? So I think that it's like a soda bottle. You put in different things in the soda bottle and you
Dude,
shake it up, and then
it's
whatever comes out comes out.
it's literally like it's neuroscience. So like so I'm not a neuroscientist. So I'm gonna throw this disclaimer out, and this information probably is wrong, but it maps to something that is correct, which is basically like I think it's like your hippocampus.
Okay.
Basically, every single conscious experience you've ever had is tagged positive or negative, and it's stored in there,
Mm.
dating all the way back from whenever you went online.
Yeah.
And so that's why there's shit that happened to you when you were 2 years old that you have no way of ever consciously remembering.
Right.
It's still impacting your life today.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, like Jordan Peterson talks about this in terms of like basically if you're 4 years old and you're not an agreeable kid, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And it's like that's because like the way that the development and the programming of our neural network works at that age is like hyperdrive.
Yeah.
And that's like the fundamental substrates. The amount of work that has to be done to unravel that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's brutal. Brutal.
Yeah, that's cool, man. This is okay. It's about 2 hours. Yeah, that should be
Oh,
that should be
2 hours.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd like to see if we can make a time to connect our networks somehow.
Yeah.
So like, for example, me meeting your friend, like I can link you up with someone else that I know based off of like if things that you're working on or that you find interesting. I'd like to really kind of do that because I'm in now a like a doing mode a little bit where I'm slowly shifting. It's been a long time and I've kind of took a long time in the being mode and the like recognizing and the kind of learning, and now I think it's time to begin the process of this kind of this project and putting together some of these scaffoldings of the thing that brings the vines up, right? Like to start, what materials is it made out of? What you know, like really kind of thinking about these things and what's it going to look like? I had the idea of Sage being the idea of the forward-facing brand name of something like Sage.ai, or like this is something that has ingested all sage knowledge, whether it be, you know, Jesus, Buddha, like whatever it is, it can understand that knowledge and then it can meet you where you are and then it can guide you on a path that leads towards greater understanding, right? Like just basic idea. But I'm talking with other people. Like I just met someone on Clubhouse. Are you on Clubhouse, by the way? Have you heard of Clubhouse? Yeah. Great. I'll add you on there.
But I think right now it's a good protocol until I
Yeah.
mean it's owned by China, so don't like be careful, you know.
Oh, is it owned by China? I didn't know that.
I think it's like 86% owned by one of their
Wow.
company. So
okay. Well, it's definitely good to meet other people that are kind of depending on the groups that you try to join and whatnot. I'm optimizing my experience there, but I met someone the other day who is working on this kind of AI cognitive structures and like a very similar, you know, knowledge graphs and like this kind of I'm really interested to talk to him a little bit more, but yeah, I want to see.
You know what it is? It's
what
this.
kind of
Like, I've had this feeling. It's like, all right, you know what? Like because I've been tweeting up like crazy recently, and I never tweet. I've always been on the sidelines. It's like the same. It's like I'm in a doing mode now.
Right.
It's more just like, no, you know what? I just want to send my signal out. I just want to send out my signal, and then like if it attracts something, whatever. And like that's kind of what it was. And it's like, yeah, now like okay, now you and I are now a connection. Now it's whatever that signal is. Let's start sending that out.
Yep.
Yeah. I guess on LinkedIn we'll exchange like, are you on Signal?
Yes, I am.
All right, so yeah, I'll give you like we'll get on Signal. And then in terms of this, like if you would like, yeah, once you get it downloaded, you can email it or
Yeah, I'll pop it on a Dropbox link, and I'll just send you over the link to download.
awesome, man. And that I don't know if you're on YouTube. If you want to post it, I'll post it on mine.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really. I'm kind of figuring out what my YouTube presence is going to be now, because I've gone from Cap Slap, which is like this dance music kind of thing. It's its own beast, to doing something called Upgrading Society, where I have the format is what's that?
You have a channel?
Yeah, upso.co is the website, and the channel I just started, but I'm not sure if I need to keep it going, because I think there's a lot of these things popping up. But the idea is to feature projects that are seeking to improve the world in one way or another, and to kind of like.
What's your Cap Slap?
Cap Slap is it's just if you just search KAPSLAP on Google, you'll find all the handles. But that started as like a fraternity thing, and then yeah, it's like my whole alter ego.
Dude, tight. I'm gonna check that out.
You check that out.
Like I want to listen to some of the music and like see if we vibe on that. I have a feeling I'm gonna like it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So all of my tunes you can't get on Spotify anymore. The mashup stuff and the mixes, those are now on podcasts. So if you go on any podcast platform and you search Cap Slap mixes, you can find that. And if you want my original songs, it's on Spotify if you just search Cap Slap. But it's been I'm gonna kind of
This is cool too, because it's like I'm literally like, so I brought my violin and my guitar has been in my mom's, right?
Nice.
Like I when I was in Indiana, I actually bought like a little cheap electric one.
Okay.
It was so cheap, it was like I'm not even gonna do it.
Yeah.
But like part of the like basically I'm like committed to like trying to ultimately the target's like right now my target is PhD.
Okay.
Right. Whatever that is in and whatever. But like I am like in a community college at ACC trying to like get my GPA back up to where I can get readmitted back to UT. Right. So like I understand the journey I'm on is pretty like not arduous. Actually, it's like common. Most people do it, but like there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But also like I'm pretty much a Bayesian, so at any point in the new future, if something better like happens, it's like okay, well I can shift. Also, it's like I can do things simultaneously, asynchronously as well.
I think that's another thing that we're kind of realizing as a generation and as this time in this space is like there are a lot of different things that we are going to be working on like simultaneously, and like whatever thing, like
whatever piece you can add.
Everyone has their own, you know.
Dude, it's like we're basically opening sourcing. We're open sourcing the development of the new religion.
Yeah. I mean, that's if you think about it like that, that's a good point. I mean, this is something that I'm really interested in how it develops. I'm really interested in using as many of the technological things that I know of and have access to bring together. It's like I've seen like, you know, what a foot is, what a hand is, what an eyeball is. And I'm like, I think like that could be a person. Like, I think that like, it's like, oh, like, how do we build that? Right. Like,
I know exactly what you mean. It's like, okay, I have this loose form of like an idea, but it's not there. And I need other people to help fill in those gaps. And then it's like, all right, dude, shit.
And there's so many other people with that. Like, that's what's really exciting is that like, I know it doesn't need to be my vision. It's our vision collectively that we're just a part of. Like, I
just want to be a part of like helping humanity be the place where I want to be.
Yeah. That's it. Man. It's easy.
Well, I just want to say like, hey, thank you for reaching out, man. Thank you for the courage of like coldly reaching out to a stranger. Cause it's like, if we can make that.
I love that nowadays. Like I want that. I want more of that. Cause it's like, if you find someone that you resonate with, like that would be that's key. Yeah.
That's the thing. It's the difference. And so it's like, remember like AOL and it's like you go into chat rooms and like, it was kind of a little thing, but it's like, you kind of were doing it for your own reasons. Right. And it's like, I want to connect to people like for how it's not just me. It's like how the combination of us equals we.
Yes.
Right. And if you shift that frame, it's like, that's the thing. It's like, okay, stop thinking society about what you can get out of it. Start thinking about what we as a society can do together to make it right.
Yep.
Man, this has been great, dude.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah. Well,
All
good
right.
to meet you, and I look forward to seeing where we go from here.
You too, brother. Appreciate it.
I'll talk to you later. Oh, hey, actually, let me think. Yeah, no. So my aunt like wants me to come out and visit sometime in the spring when things sort of get on down. So like definitely, yeah, we'll connect.
Let me know, man. I love that. And I'm also like, again, this whole pandemic has shifted a lot for me in terms of like the vision where, you know, like
come on down to Austin anytime.
That's what I'm thinking, man. Austin sounds real promising right now. So this is something that's planted in my brain over time. We'll see what happens, but that's.
Well, hey, anytime. Yeah, for sure. If you want to come visit anytime, you got a place to stay. I'll be your tour guide, right? Like, come on down. The water's real nice.
Love that. All right. Take care, brother.
Yep. Later.